The morning of the competition arrived gray and heavy, as though the sky itself bore the weight Malik carried in his chest. His missing notebook haunted him. He had searched every corner of the apartment until sunrise, but it hadn't turned up. Whether it was stolen from his locker at school, or misplaced somewhere between exhaustion and panic, it didn't matter. The preparation he had poured himself into was gone. Malik nodded slowly, though doubt clawed at his insides. He carried his bag to the car with trembling hands, every step reminding him of what was at stake. "That's the viral kid. Watch, it's all hype." Each word was a blade. Malik sat down, forcing himself to breathe. On stage, the judges adjusted their glasses and whispered to one another, papers shuffling in their hands. Malik noticed how their eyes lingered on him just a second too long, as if they weren't looking at a competitor but at a controversy. Ms. Carter leaned over from the row behind him, whispering, "Don't let them define this moment for you. You define it." The competition began. The first round of problems flashed on the screen above the stage. Malik's pencil flew across the page, his mind falling into rhythm. Equations unraveled like thread, each solution sharpening his focus. For a brief moment, the noise faded. It was just him and the numbers again, the only space where truth remained unshaken. None of the other students had been asked to do this. The request wasn't about fairness, it was about suspicion. Round after round, the pressure mounted. Malik's hands ached from gripping his pencil, sweat dampening the edges of his paper. He could feel the weight of history pressing on him, not just his own life, but the generations of black students who had been told classrooms like this weren't for them. The third round brought the unexpected twist. Malik's missing notebook suddenly reappeared, clutched in the hands of one of his competitors, a boy from a nearby private school. The boy smirked when their eyes met. Malik's chest tightened as he realized the truth. Someone had taken it to sabotage him, but the plan had backfired. The boy raised his hand, trying to hand the notebook to a judge. "Found this backstage," he said, voice dripping with false innocence. "Thought it looked useful." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The implication was clear. Malik might have cheated. The judge frowned, flipping through the notebook before returning it to Malik's desk. "These are practice problems, nothing from today's competition." But the seed of doubt had already been planted in the audience. Malik could feel it in the way people shifted in their seats, their whispers sharper than ever. Even when cleared of wrongdoing, suspicion clung to him like smoke. By the time the final round began, sweat dripped down his temples, his hands shaking. The air in the hall was suffocating. The moderator's voice echoed, and now the last problem. The screen lit up with an equation, unlike any Malik had ever seen before. Complex, layered, almost designed to break them. Gasps filled the hall, even from some of the judges. Malik's heart pounded. He knew in that instant that this wasn't just the hardest question of the day. It was a question loaded with meaning. If he failed, the whispers would become truth. He wasn't ready. He didn't belong. He was a fraud. He gripped his pencil, staring at the problem, as if it were staring back. His mind raced, reaching through every scrap of knowledge he had gathered. It wasn't just numbers anymore. It was identity. It was belonging. It was survival. The hall fell silent. Every eye was on him. And as Malik pressed his pencil to the page, he realized something terrifying. This last problem wasn't just about his future. It was about the pride of his entire community, every person who had ever been silenced or doubted. But when the final problem appeared, it wasn't only Malik's future at stake. It was his entire community's pride. The final problem had wrung Malik dry. But when he placed his pencil down and looked at the solution glowing back at him, something inside him steadied. His answer was right. He knew it as surely as he knew his own name. For a heartbeat, the room was frozen in that fragile stillness, where history feels suspended, waiting for judgment. Then the judges conferred in hurried whispers, pens scratching furiously against paper. The audience leaned forward, breaths held, their faces a mix of awe and disbelief. Finally, the head judge rose and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice deliberate, "we have reviewed the solutions. The highest score of the competition belongs to competitor 4, Malik Johnson." For a moment, silence held its grip. Then applause erupted, some of it genuine, some hesitant, some reluctant. Denise shot to her feet, tears streaking her cheeks, clapping until her palms burned. Miss Carter stood too, her eyes shining with pride. A group of neighborhood kids cheered wildly, their voices echoing through the hall. But beneath the applause was a ripple of unease. Malik could see it in the judge's eyes, in the murmurs among the organizers, in the way some parents folded their arms instead of clapping. He had won, but his victory hadn't erased their disbelief. It had only unsettled it. When Malik stepped off the stage, cameras immediately swarmed. Reporters shoved microphones at him, their questions rapid fire. How does it feel to prove everyone wrong? Do you think your teacher was misunderstood? Some say this was staged. What's your response? Malik blinked against the flashes, his throat tightening. He wanted to speak, to tell them what it really felt like, but the words clogged behind his teeth. Before he could answer, Miss Harrington, the principal, slipped into the frame, placing a hand on his shoulder. We at Roosevelt High are incredibly proud of Malik, she said smoothly. This is what happens when teachers challenge students to reach their potential. Malik's stomach turned. Challenge? That wasn't what had happened. Whitman hadn't challenged him. He had mocked him. But here was his principal spinning the story in front of cameras, stealing the narrative, before Malik could claim it for himself. Reporters scribbled, nodding, swallowing her words whole. Malik felt invisible all over again, even as the cameras pointed straight at him. Behind him, Whitman appeared too, his face arranged into a mask of pride. I always knew Malik had potential, he said to one reporter. Sometimes it takes a push. The audacity of it made Malik's chest burn. The man who had set him up for humiliation was now using his triumph as proof of his own mentorship. Denise pushed forward, fury in her eyes, but Ms. Carter held her back. Not now, she whispered. Not like this. The school wasted no time taking credit. By the next morning, the official website carried a banner, Roosevelt High student shines at regional competition. The article praised the school's culture of excellence and Whitman's dedication to pushing students. Malik's name appeared, but buried beneath the glowing language about the institution that had tried to erase him. Denise slammed her laptop shut when she saw it. They're rewriting everything, she said bitterly. They're trying to erase the truth again.
Miss Carter agreed.
That's what they do. They bury the pain and claim the glory. Meanwhile, Whitman's defenders came crawling out of the woodwork. Online, former students wrote glowing comments about how he had changed their lives. A parent wrote an op-ed arguing that good teachers sometimes get misunderstood in this era of cancel culture. They painted him not as a bully but as a misunderstood educator who had simply pushed too hard. And through it all, Malik's name remained caught in the crossfire. Strangers debated his worth endlessly. He's brilliant. Undeniable. No, he's being used as a pawn. Whitman deserves credit. That kid would have been nothing without him. Malik scrolled through the words late at night, feeling his chest tighten until it was hard to breathe. His victory had been real, but it no longer belonged to him. It belonged to institutions, to narratives, to people who twisted the story into something easier to digest. Denise noticed his silence, the way he sat hunched at the table after dinner staring at his untouched plate. Talk to me, she urged gently. They're using me, he whispered. Like I'm not even a person, like I'm just a symbol. Her heart ached. Baby, you are more than a symbol. But symbols scare people. They'll either worship you or try to break you. Either way, they don't see you. Malik's fists clenched. Then maybe I need to make them see me. The twist came at the press conference held the next week. The school organized it to celebrate Malik's achievement. Reporters filled the library, cameras flashing, the stage decorated with banners of Roosevelt High's logo. Malik sat at the center, Denise at his side, Whitman and Miss Harrington flanking him. The principal began with her usual polished lines, painting the story as one of inspired teaching and resilient learning. Whitman added his own, insisting he had always believed in Malik. And then a reporter turned directly to Malik. What do you think, Malik? Do you agree with your teacher and principal's version of events? The room fell silent, all eyes on him. Malik felt Denise's hand tighten on his knee, Ms. Carter's gaze urging him from the crowd. He opened his mouth, then closed it, his throat dry. In that moment, he knew he had two choices. He could let the school continue rewriting the story, turning him into a prop in their version of events, or he could tell the truth, raw and unfiltered, knowing it would unleash a storm he might not survive. The cameras leaned in, waiting. Reporters poised their pens. Whitman's smile froze, brittle around the edges. Malik took a deep breath, his heart hammering, and as cameras flashed and reporters shouted, Malik had to choose between staying a symbol or reclaiming his own voice. The library press conference ended in a blur of flashing lights, nervous glances, and a decision Malik wasn't sure he had fully made until the words left his mouth. He had chosen truth over silence, defiance over safety, and once he spoke it, once he told the world what had really happened in that classroom, there was no turning back. The backlash was immediate, louder than applause. Some hailed him as brave, finally speaking against the polished lies of his school. Others attacked him viciously, calling him ungrateful, disruptive, divisive. Whitman, red-faced, denied everything, claiming Malik had twisted the story for attention. The principal doubled down, insisting the incident had been misinterpreted. The school's lawyers circled like vultures, trying to intimidate Denise into silence. And yet, despite the storm, something powerful shifted. Malik's voice, once ignored, once dismissed, was being heard, not just by the reporters in the room, but by students in other schools, by parents who had been silenced, by communities who had long carried the same scars. His truth wasn't just his anymore. It was a mirror reflecting a wider reality. Weeks later, Malik found himself standing once again in the same classroom where it had all begun. The desks were in their usual rows, the air still faintly smelling of dry erase markers. The chalkboard loomed at the front, clean and waiting, but everything felt different. He wasn't the same boy who had once sat invisible in the middle row, head down, trying not to be noticed. He was someone who had been dragged into the light, bruised by it, but unbroken. The class buzzed with low chatter as Malik walked in. Some students stared, others whispered, a few smiled faintly. Even Whitman was there, his polished mask cracked beyond repair, though still clinging desperately to authority. For a moment Malik stood at the back, his chest tight with memory. He could almost hear the laughter from that day, ringing in his ears. He could see the chalk in his trembling hand, the smirk on Whitman's face, the way silence had swallowed the room when he dared to solve the problem. But this time, there was no laughter, no setup, only the quiet recognition that something irreversible had happened. Whitman cleared his throat, trying to maintain composure. "Johnson," he said stiffly, "would you like to—" "No," Malik interrupted, his voice steady, calm, but cutting. "Not this time. I'm not here for your performance." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. A ripple moved through the class. Some students exchanged glances, others straightened in their seats. For the first time, Malik wasn't reacting to Whitman. He was setting the tone. He walked to the chalkboard anyway, picking up a piece of chalk, not because Whitman told him to, but because he chose to. Slowly, deliberately, he wrote 3 words across the board: "I belong here." The room went silent, not the silence of mockery, but the silence of recognition. Malik set the chalk down, turning to face his peers. "This started as a joke," he said quietly, his voice carrying enough force to reach every corner of the room. "But it isn't funny anymore. Not for me, not for anyone who's ever been told they don't belong." No one laughed. No one smirked. Whitman shifted uncomfortably at his desk, his authority evaporating under the weight of Malik's words. The power had shifted, not with shouting, not with violence, but with truth. When Malik left the classroom that day, the hallway felt different too. Students didn't just look at him, they moved aside, some nodding in quiet respect, others simply watching, thoughtful. He wasn't invisible anymore. At home that evening, Denise wrapped her arms around him, her tears soaking his shoulder. "You've already won," she whispered. "Not because of trophies or headlines, but because you showed them what they tried to hide." Malik nodded, though a part of him still felt the ache of the battle. He knew the world wouldn't stop testing him. He knew there would be more Whitmans, more institutions eager to twist truth into lies. But he also knew something else. He didn't need their permission anymore. He had proven, to himself and to everyone watching, that he could excel, that he could shine, even under the weight of ridicule and doubt. The cruel joke had become a turning point. A movement, a reminder that brilliance couldn't be buried, no matter how many hands tried to press it down. And as Malik stared at his reflection in the window that night, city lights glowing faintly behind him, he asked himself a question that refused to leave his mind. If one boy mocked into silence, could shift the room just by daring to solve a problem, how many other Maliks were out there, silenced before they were ever seen? Stories like this don't just happen in movies. They happen every day, often unseen, often denied. One wrong look, one false assumption, and a life can be shattered in seconds. So let me ask you, if you were standing there watching this unfold, what would you have done? And if it happened to you, what would you want someone to say? Comment your answer below. Share this story so more people can face the truth. And let's see if together, we can stop silence from protecting injustice. A black mother rushes into an emergency room, cradling her feverish son, only to be told, he's faking it. Let the real patients through. Minutes later, her son collapses. The monitors flatline. Doctors panic. But it's what they find in his chart that leaves everyone frozen. The question is, who wrote the note that said, "Do not resuscitate," and why? Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us, where are you watching from? Watch till the end, then rate this story out of 10. Share in the comments below. Your feedback helps us bring you even better stories every single day. Elijah Moore sat in Lecture Hall 3B of Crestmont University, surrounded by a sea of crisp notebooks, MacBooks, and anticipation. The vaulted ceilings, glass walls, and soft hum of the HVAC system gave everything a sterilized, reverent hush. Students leaned forward, poised, projectors flickered. The air felt like a cord tightened around the throat, opportunity and judgment in equal measure. From the moment he entered, Elijah felt the weight of eyes. Not overt stares, but the kind that measured his presence against an unspoken template. Many of his classmates came from families where Ivy League expectation was inherited, staff legacy connections, months in prep school. Elijah came from the south side of Chicago, from neighborhoods where every ambition was haunted by scarcity. He'd fought to get here. He wore a navy sweater over a crisp white shirt, but the effort felt small. No card or credential would insulate him from the subtle calibrations of doubt. As Dr. Lawrence Kimball prepared to lecture, he paced before the screen, adjusting the ties between ethics and artificial intelligence. His voice was smooth, practiced, authoritative, but Elijah watched the slight glances Professor Kimball cast in his direction. Whenever Elijah raised his hand in class, the professor would call on others first, or with a faint hesitation, rephrase the question back to the room. Today, Kimball's tone carried an undercurrent. In our exploration, he began, some argue AI can replace the human mind. Others contend it enhances human potential. He let that hang. Then he fixed his gaze on Elijah. "Miss Moore," he said, voice courteous but sharp. "You've spoken in class before. You seem confident. Tell us, why not let AI do the thinking for you? Why insist you alone carry the burden?" The challenge was meant to sting. A dare thinly veiled as academic curiosity. The room shifted. A few students chuckled softly. The expectation was collective shock, discomfort, maybe embarrassment. But Elijah didn't flinch. He looked at Kimball calmly. Inwardly, his heart pounded, but outwardly, he held himself steady. He replied, low and clear, "Because thinking is the proof. And if I ask AI to think instead of me, then I affirm the very doubt you plant." In that moment, silence thickened. Kimball's lips parted as if to respond, but no words came. Some classmates pivoted, whispering. A few eyes widened. Others looked away briskly. Elijah's acceptance of the dare was not a surrender. It was a declaration. He did not need to boast. He did not need to argue. His decision hung in the balance. Inside, he felt the swirl of everything that had brought him here. Late nights at a shared kitchen table, textbooks borrowed from libraries with overdue fines, mentors who told him to be twice as good, but in public he masked it. Publicly, he was just one more student. Privately, he was proving something. As the lecture continued, Kimball shifted topics, but his tone changed. He peppered the class with prompts about original thought, academic integrity, synthetic reasoning. When he came to Elijah's section, he paused mid-sentence and asked, "Do you trust yourself enough to defy your tools, Mr. Moore?" A question pregnant with insinuation. Other students offered their answers, stammering or thoughtful, but none like Elijah's. And when the class ended, a ripple passed through the room. People gathered their bags, exchanged chit-chat, but around Elijah there was an undercurrent. People rearranged seats. A few cast glimpses, as though deciding whether he belonged. When he walked out into the hallway, the broad corridors felt narrower. Portraits of past deans and benefactors lined the walls, pale faces, impeccable suits, all gazing forward with impassive eyes. Elijah passed by and felt the echo. You are not in that legacy. You are beyond it, or beside it, but you do not belong to it.
In the stairwell he lingered.
He placed a hand on the cold metal railing. He exhaled. Most students streamed ahead, voices echoing about lunch, group projects, internships. He didn't join. He let the echo of Kimball's dare replay quietly. He thought, if I take this dare, I risk the accusation of cheating. But if I refuse, I reinforce the idea that my mind alone is suspect. He resolved. He would build something more powerful than Kimball expected. He would construct a system that didn't just do assignments. It would show the fissures in the system itself. Walking toward the computer labs, he sensed, somewhere behind him, a figure watching, not a student, but someone more discreet, someone in an office above, maybe glancing through blinds. The feeling prickled, imprinted itself so strongly, he nearly turned around. But he didn't. Some fights were fought quietly, invisibly. In the lab, Elijah logged into his workstation. Rows of monitors cast pale blue light across his face. He pulled up 2 windows, one blank document, one code editor. His fingers hovered. He remembered his mother's voice. Don't you ever let them make you doubt you belong in a room. She had whispered that in their cramped apartment when he was 15, after the principal accused him falsely of plagiarism in high school. She sat beside him, held his hand, said, "You will write your own truth." He swallowed. The hum of computers formed a lullaby. The blank screen taunted him. He began to type, not the assignment yet, but scaffolding. Libraries, datasets, bias filters, algorithmic layers he'd sketched months earlier, but never built public. At the heart, a meta-model designed to detect bias in grading, in admission policies, and in evaluation standards. He knew the risk. If this code ever became real, people in power would fight it. But he also knew the necessity. If black brilliance isn't allowed to disrupt, then it must itself find another ground. As hours slipped by, the lab emptied. The cleaning crew turned on lights. The late student left. The silence deepened. Elijah worked past midnight, debugging, linking modules, integrating datasets that tracked grading distributions, professor comments, demographic splits. He layered in natural language capabilities so that his AI could explain its conclusions in human prose. He paused in the quiet. He downloaded logs. He checked error messages. A stray script triggered an alert, something unusual in the system monitoring student servers. Elijah frowned, heart-catching. Did someone intercept it? He scanned network logs. Nothing definitive. Perhaps paranoia. But late at night, he felt the faint hum of surveillance, the breath of watchers. He shut down most modules, except a small sandbox, preserving core code. He backed up drives to encrypted external storage. He emailed to himself final drafts. He locked his screens. Then he did what he rarely did. He exhaled. He slid his chair back, rubbed his eyes, and leaned against the desk for a few quiet seconds, feeling the tension in his shoulders drain. In that moment, the lab's door creaked. Not loudly, just a soft click. He looked up. A silhouette stood in the doorway. His breath stuck. The figure didn't step forward, only stood in the ambient glow of hallway light. Elijah could not tell whether it was a student or staff. So many lights dim, so many shapes blur. His heart thudded. He whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. He looked down. His screens were locked, code hidden behind passwords. The figure remained still, then turned and left silently. Elijah stared after the departure, mind racing with questions. Was this someone from the university's tech staff? Was it surveillance, or a friend testing him? He didn't know. He shut down everything, packed his bag, and walked out, senses heightened. In the darkness he sensed that someone was already watching his first move. Elijah steps into the night, knowing his code is alive, and that someone just infiltrated the lab to see how far he'd gone. Elijah walked the marble corridors of Crestmont University like a man learning how to breathe underwater. Careful, composed, and always calculating how long he could hold his truth before it drowned him. On the surface he blended. He showed up on time, spoke when called on, delivered flawless assignments laced with deliberate imperfections. Just enough to be impressive, but not threatening. It was a ritual. Code switching in a world obsessed with pedigree. In classes filled with students whose parents had startups named after them, or endowments listed on building plaques. Elijah learned early that excellence wasn't enough. It had to be muffled, palatable, acceptable. When a white student stumbled on a presentation, professors reassured them. That's part of the learning curve. But when Elijah offered a cutting-edge solution during a project critique, Professor Kimball leaned back and asked the room, "Does that seem plausible?" The coded word, the quiet suspicion. To survive here, Elijah had learned to hide how far ahead he really was. Every evening, he logged off Crestmont's system and into another identity. Online, in private servers, forums, and code repositories, Elijah was known simply as Nix42. Under that name, he mentored dozens of underrepresented students in tech. He built custom tools for young black coders, including a plugin that detected racial bias in hiring AI used by Fortune 500 companies. A recruiter once tried to claim the plugin as open-source fodder. Elijah shut it down, quietly, with code that exposed their company's internal bias metrics. But none of it had his real name on it. Not yet. Now, after Professor Kimball's public dare, Elijah felt the walls around his carefully hidden genius tightening. The comment in class wasn't random. It was a trap, a setup disguised as sarcasm. Elijah knew the university had been increasing its scrutiny of AI use. They'd circulated memos about ChatGPT violations, implemented detection software, and flagged essays with unusual syntax. Still, Elijah couldn't let the moment pass. He couldn't back down. Back in his dorm that night, he reopened the AI project he had quietly been building for months. It wasn't just an assistant. It was a mirror, one that reflected not just student prompts, but institutional bias itself. The project's core engine was trained on thousands of academic datasets, grading rubrics, student feedback, hiring practices, even disciplinary actions, all pulled from public and scraped records. He called it Oraculum, part oracle, part curriculum, but entirely revolutionary. Its first task wasn't homework assistance. It was bias detection, mapping out patterns where professors gave harsher grades to students with black-sounding names, where course evaluations penalized accents, and where black students were flagged more often for academic dishonesty. Oraculum didn't just complete assignments. It asked, why is this rubric weighted this way? And why are citations by black authors consistently marked as less credible? It was quiet, brilliant, dangerous, and now, it was almost ready. Elijah spent that week balancing his visible coursework and his hidden code. In class, he pretended to struggle with concepts he could teach. Outside of class, he added layers to Oraculum, giving it a conversational interface, a logic tree that could explain its reasoning in human terms. He even coded it to simulate polite confusion, making its challenges to academic authority sound disarming. "Professor, I may be mistaken, but wouldn't this rubric penalize students disproportionately based on cultural dialect?" By Thursday, Oraculum was ready for its first full test. Elijah uploaded a mock assignment, a computer ethics essay on the limits of AI in the classroom. He gave the prompt, adjusted the tone to be academically formal, and hit generate. In 45 seconds, Oraculum produced an essay, elegant, incisive, and more importantly, one that embedded a meta-argument about who gets to define academic integrity in the first place. He smiled. For the first time all week, he allowed himself that. Then came the leak. Friday afternoon, he received a strange message on his private burner email. The sender used a masked address, but had somehow obtained one of Oraculum's early outputs. The subject line was chilling. "You don't want this to be your legacy." Attached was a screenshot of a chat interface. His interface with a red line drawn through the text and the phrase "AI ghostwriting" flagged confirmed source. Elijah froze. The only people who had seen Oraculum's inner workings were himself and a few anonymous collaborators he'd never met, trusted contacts from online circles, all of whom used encrypted communications. He immediately checked his logs. Nothing showed a breach, no unusual logins, no data pulls. Then he saw it, a clipboard file he hadn't saved, timestamped it during his last lab session. The same night someone had stood in the doorway and vanished without a word. Someone had been inside the room, and not just physically. Someone had copied Oraculum's raw output. That evening, Elijah skipped dinner. He shut down his laptop, disconnected from the network, and walked the long path to the north wing of the campus. The air smelled like wet concrete, and Lee. He called a contact, a cybersecurity admin from a Discord server, and asked how to trace a university staffer's internal keystrokes. The voice on the other end paused, then said, "You sure you want to go that deep, brother?" "I don't have a choice," Elijah said. "They're not trying to stop my project. They're trying to make it look like I cheated." That night, Oraculum began self-monitoring. Elijah coded it to detect anyone attempting to access its files, and to camouflage itself inside a dummy research app about machine vision tools. He created fake scripts, loaded with errors, and seeded them into university directories. He wanted whoever was watching to think he was stumbling, second-guessing himself. But the silence didn't last long. By Sunday evening, he received an official email marked Private Academic Conduct Committee. The text was brief. Dear Mr. Moore, we have received an anonymous tip regarding potential violations of Crestmont's academic integrity policy, specifically related to your recent project in CS 348, Computer Ethics in AI. You are required to appear before the committee this Thursday at 10 a.m. for a preliminary review. Non-compliance may result in academic suspension pending further investigation. The email was unsigned. Elijah stared at the screen. The rage came in quiet, shaking waves. They were trying to bury him before the project even launched. He reached for his phone, heart pounding, fingers trembling slightly. He called his mother. She didn't answer at first. When she finally did, her voice was soft, concerned.
Elijah? You okay?
There was a long pause. Then his voice cracked. They're coming after me, Mom. I built something that tells the truth and now they're trying to make me look like a liar. His mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said something she hadn't said in years. A phrase from when he was just a kid, scared of a school principal or a cop car lingering too long outside their block. Remember, baby, they don't fear your mistakes. They fear your brilliance. That night, Elijah didn't sleep. He opened a blank page and started documenting everything. Dates, server logs, file versions, proof of authorship, email headers. He created a timestamp chain that could be traced to his initial builds, complete with GitHub commits and encrypted backups. He even wrote a script that would send it all to trusted contacts if he didn't log in within. But the worst part wasn't the fear. It was knowing that truth wasn't a shield in spaces like this. Not when your skin made your excellence seem like a threat. The next morning, he walked into class as if nothing had happened. He took his seat. Kimball entered the room without glancing at him. Halfway through the lecture, he noticed something odd. A TA standing at the back, watching him the whole time, holding a folder. And when class ended, Kimball finally spoke. Elijah, he said, voice calm, unreadable. Would you mind staying a moment? Elijah nodded. Kimball sat across from him, hands clasped. I hope, the professor began, that this inquiry doesn't discourage your enthusiasm for the field. Elijah didn't respond. Kimball added, of course, if there's anything you'd like to clarify in advance of Thursday's meeting, now would be the time. It wasn't an offer. It was a warning. Elijah rose, slung his bag over his shoulder, and replied quietly, I'll let the project speak for itself. What Elijah doesn't know is that Kimball wasn't the one who filed the report. It came from another professor, someone Elijah once trusted. The formal hearing notice came wrapped in the sterile politeness of institutional language, words like preliminary inquiry and possible breach of academic expectations. But to Elijah, it read like a threat cloaked in paperwork. The accusation was clear. He had allegedly used unauthorized AI to complete his ethics assignment, the same assignment Dr. Kimball had publicly dared him to use AI on. What stung most wasn't the accusation. It was the way the university framed it as a concern for academic integrity, while students around him openly joked about using ChatGPT to finish essays and presentations. Elijah had overheard classmates brag about getting AI-generated answers, entire reports ghostwritten by bots, and nothing had happened to them. But none of them were black. None of them had written an AI that didn't just replicate text, it revealed truth. And Crestmont wasn't ready for truth. The hearing was set for Thursday at 10 a.m. The notice didn't say who had filed the report, only that the university had received a credible tip. Elijah suspected Kimball, but something about the wording felt distant, almost clinical, as if someone higher up had intervened. The email lacked Kimball's usual backhanded flair. That morning, Elijah dressed carefully. Not for vanity, for armor. A dark charcoal suit, clean white shirt, no tie. Crisp, but unassuming. Respectable, but not too proud. The kind of outfit that said I came prepared, even though you never expected me to be. The hearing was held in Crestmont's Academic Review Hall, a paneled room with tall windows and low lighting, the kind used for ceremonies and cover-ups. The long oak table was lined with committee members, most of them tenured faculty or deans. They wore neutral expressions, the kind that look fair but are built for control. Elijah entered alone. At the center of the table sat Dr. Yvonne Laren, chair of academic affairs. To her left was Professor Greg Stanton, a computer science department head, and to her right, Dr. Lawrence Kimball. Kimball offered Elijah a nod. It was the same polite, unreadable gesture he always used, like he was acknowledging a server who brought the wrong drink but didn't want to cause a scene. Mr. Moore, Laren began, thank you for appearing today. We'd like to clarify some details about your recent submission in CS 348. As you're aware, use of unauthorized artificial intelligence tools in academic work violates Crestmont policy. Elijah sat upright. I'm aware, but my project wasn't unauthorized. It was built by me, from scratch, every line of code. Professor Stanton leaned in. Are you suggesting you designed your own AI model, independent of existing LLMs?
Yes.
A quiet flickered across the room. That's a bold claim, Laren said, exchanging a glance with Kimball. And your tool, Oraculum, was trained using university data? Elijah didn't blink. No. It was trained using publicly available datasets, admissions records, faculty tenure patterns, grade distributions, all from legally accessible sources. I verified everything. Stanton frowned. Even if technically public, aggregating that kind of data without university approval walks a fine ethical line. Elijah exhaled slowly. The line only gets questioned when people like me walk it. Kimball cleared his throat. Let's not turn this into a social commentary. We're here to determine whether your use of AI constituted academic dishonesty. A flicker of anger ran through Elijah. He leaned forward. You dared me to use AI. In class, publicly.
Laren looked surprised. Is that accurate, Dr. Kimball?
Kimball's jaw tightened. It was a rhetorical provocation. I never expected. Expected what? Elijah interrupted. That I'd build something better than the tools the university already uses. That I'd expose things you wanted hidden.
The room grew still. No one responded.
Elijah reached into his satchel and placed a USB drive on the table. This is the full build, he said. The source code, training logs, citations, datasets, and version history. Oraculum isn't some chatbot. It's an ethical instrument. It doesn't just answer prompts. It questions the structures behind them. Laren hesitated. You coded it to audit academic bias? Yes. And I can prove it. He connected his laptop to the room's projector and launched Oraculum's interface. The screen came alive, not with a blinking cursor, but a clean minimalist panel. Elijah, run diagnostic on CS 348 grading patterns by demographic. The AI began processing. A moment later, a chart appeared. The data was brutal. Students with traditionally black names had a 12% lower average score across assignments, even when accounting for GPA and participation. Feedback patterns showed disproportionately negative tone in comments, left by two professors, including Kimball. Kimball leaned back, visibly uncomfortable. This is speculative. Elijah turned toward him. No, it's statistical. Professor Stanton rubbed his temples. Even if your tool is accurate, you're exposing faculty data in a way that could damage reputations. Shouldn't that be the point? Elijah replied. If the system is fair, it should stand scrutiny. And if it's not, we should want to know. For a moment Laren looked at him, not with suspicion, but something closer to consideration. Mr. Moore, she said, your project is remarkable. But it puts us in a complicated position. Even if you built this independently, using it to complete coursework, even as a demonstration, can be interpreted as self-authorship via unauthorized methods. Elijah's voice steadied. Then the question isn't whether I cheated. It's whether the truth I exposed makes you uncomfortable. Another silence. This time heavier. Behind them, the projection screen glowed with more data. Patterns of unequal referrals for disciplinary actions, mentorship gaps, and admission red flags tied to high school zip codes. Oraculum was no longer just an assignment. It was a threat to the mythology of Crestmont. One committee member whispered something to another. Stanton leaned into Laren's ear. And then one of the older board members, a gray-haired man who hadn't spoken all meeting, turned toward Kimball and muttered just loud enough for Elijah to hear. This could go viral. Shut it down. Elijah heard it. Every word. He caught the flash of panic ripple across Kimball's face. Laren looked up. We will adjourn for deliberation. You'll receive our decision within 72 hours. As Elijah packed up his things, he could feel the walls of the room folding in. Not with defeat, but with the kind of fear institutions feel when control starts to slip. And just as he reached the door, he paused. "I suggest," he said without turning back, "that you think carefully before trying to bury this. Because the more you try to erase me, the louder the truth gets." He walked out, but as he exited, another professor, someone he once trusted, stood waiting in the hallway. Not Kimball. Not Stanton. It was Professor Rainey, his former mentor, the one who had encouraged his early work. And her expression wasn't supportive. It was nervous, guarded. "Elijah," she said softly. "Can we talk?" Elijah's stomach drops as he realizes it wasn't Kimball who filed the report. It was Professor Rainey, and she's about to tell him why. Elijah stood frozen in the hallway outside the hearing room, staring at Professor Rainey's face, the one he used to trust. Her presence here, after the committee's tense deliberation, wasn't random, and the way her lips pressed together, hesitant, ashamed, confirmed what he already suspected. "You filed the report," he said flatly, voice barely above a whisper. She looked down for a moment before nodding. "I didn't want to," she said, "but I didn't have a choice." He blinked, stunned at the cowardice of the confession. "You always have a choice." Rainey sighed, glancing down the hallway before continuing. "Elijah, I've been watching your work for months. I know how good you are, but you crossed into territory the university isn't ready for. You didn't just challenge a professor, you exposed a system. You made them vulnerable. That makes you dangerous." He laughed, but it wasn't warm. "So instead of helping me, you reported me." "I reported what I had to," she said. "Not to punish you, to slow things down before they punished you worse." Elijah stared at her for a long time. Her eyes told him she believed what she was saying. That didn't make it forgivable. It made it worse. "You warned them," he said. "But not me." And with that he turned and walked away. That night, Elijah didn't return to his dorm. He went straight to Lab 07 in the basement of the computer science wing. His sanctuary, the place where Oraculum lived. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly as he closed the door behind him, locked it, and pulled the blinds down over the narrow glass window. He set his backpack on the floor, pulled out his laptop, and connected to the external drive where the full build of Oraculum waited. He wasn't going to wait for a verdict. They wanted a reason to silence him. He'd give them a reason too loud to ignore. He booted up the AI and opened the analytics interface. The last few weeks had yielded hundreds of test prompts, from coursework to institutional simulations. But Elijah had been saving the most explosive scripts for this moment. Not homework responses, but investigative breakdowns of Crestmont's own records, data that was technically public, admissions statistics, diversity reports, faculty performance reviews, tenure approvals. It had taken Elijah months to gather and cross-reference them with anonymized student feedback from forums and social media. What Oraculum had revealed was chilling. Bias wasn't just accidental, it was systemic, codified. He ran the first script. A graph populated across the screen. Admission rates over a 10-year span by race and income. Black applicants with identical GPAs and SET scores as white applicants had a 22% lower acceptance rate. He ran a second. Tenure approvals for faculty. Black professors were 37% less likely to receive tenure on their first application, even with comparable publishing records. He ran a third. Disciplinary action by student demographics. Black students made up only 8% of the student body, but accounted for nearly half of all academic dishonesty investigations. Oraculum didn't just generate insights. It presented them with cross-validated context, citations, even emotional resonance. It didn't say, "Here's the data." It said, "Here's the story the data tells." Elijah added a voice interface, his own. He had spent weeks training a text-to-speech model to mirror his tone, inflections, cadences. The final product felt like a ghost of himself, calm, deliberate, and unafraid. He opened OBS, the screen recording software, and hit record. On the screen, he typed, "What is academic integrity at Crestmont University?" The voice answered, "Academic integrity is a policy applied unequally. It is invoked to protect tradition, but rarely to protect truth. In this data you will see who gets questioned, who gets believed, and who gets erased. I was asked to let AI do the thinking. So I did. And here's what it found." Elijah paused the recording, added subtitles, and edited in a quiet instrumental background. Minimal, haunting. He inserted each of the charts as chapters, For each segment, the AI didn't just narrate numbers, it narrated injustice. The final cut was 7 minutes long. When it ended, the screen faded to black. One line remained. Built by Elijah Moore. Powered by truth. You decide. He uploaded it to a clean YouTube account, shared it across 3 platforms: Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok. Then he sat back and waited. By morning, his phone was vibrating non-stop. It started with a DM from a Black STEM influencer. "Bro, this is nuclear." Then TikTok lit up. A popular creator stitched the video and added, "They gave this black student a dare and he broke the whole institution instead." By noon, the video had hit 700. By 3 p.m., it was trending on Twitter. EQLM, Elijah Moore, AI whistleblower. Comments poured in. People from all over the country, students, professors, even tech employees, started sharing their own stories of bias masked as policy. But not all attention was supportive. One anonymous account posted Elijah's student ID photo. Another claimed his AI was manipulated to fake racism, where it didn't exist. A conservative tech columnist tweeted, "This is why you don't let activism infiltrate STEM." Elijah Moore is the result of DEI gone too far. Crestmont's official account went quiet. Then at 5:42 p.m., Elijah received 2 emails simultaneously. The first was from the university's legal department.
Mr. Moore,
You are hereby instructed to remove the unauthorized public use of Crestmont academic data in your recent online video. Continued distribution may constitute a breach of policy and federal privacy protections. Office of Legal Compliance. The second email made his breath catch. Subject: Opportunity, Confidential. Elijah, we've been watching what you built. Not just the tech, the courage. We'd like to discuss a potential opportunity. Remote or in person. We're prepared to offer $140K base, hell equity. Let's talk. L&D lead technical recruiter, Ionic Systems. Ionic, one of the top 5 AI startups in Silicon Valley. Known for their aggressive recruitment, backed by major venture capital, and now reaching out to a suspended black student, facing expulsion for doing exactly what he was told not to. He sat back, hands in his lap. This wasn't vindication, it was war. The cease and desist wasn't about data misuse. It was about silencing a voice that had pierced the institution's veil.
And the job offer?
That was bait. A golden parachute designed to pull him out before he could do more damage, or reveal more truth. Elijah closed his laptop. He didn't reply to either email. Not yet. He needed to think. Strategize. He needed to ask himself a question more dangerous than any AI prompt he'd written.
Was he willing to risk everything to finish what he started?
That night, Elijah returned to the lab, only to find his building access revoked. His student ID flashed red. Denied. He stood outside the glass doors, staring through the panel, into the darkened hall. But as he turned to leave, his phone buzzed again, not with another email, but with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "They're going to erase everything by morning. Back up your drives. Meet me at the East Lot. 11 p.m. S." As Elijah rushes to recover his data, he realizes someone inside the university has just flipped and they're risking everything to help him before the system wipes him out. The internet didn't just react to Elijah Moore's video, it detonated. Within hours, Oraculum, the truth behind the numbers, was no longer just a college student's AI demo. It was a movement, it was a mirror, and it was sparking a fire in every corner of online discourse, from STEM forums to socio-political panels on YouTube. The trending tags were relentless. Oraculum, Elijah Moore, sure AI whistleblower, Crestmont cover-up. Elijah, sitting alone in his off-campus sublet with his phone on silent, watched the chaos unfold on his cracked screen, muted. The last 48 hours had felt like time collapsing. Every hour brought a new article, a new thread, a new reaction video dissecting his voice, his project, his face. That was the part he hadn't been prepared for. The moment someone found an old Crestmont promo video, featuring him as a diversity scholar, it was over. His face became the thumbnail. His voice, the one he coded into Oraculum, became a viral sound on TikTok. The remixers came. So did the detractors. On Black Twitter, the response was immediate and fierce. Elijah Moore is what they fear when they hand us the tools. This brother built an AI that tells the truth, and they called it cheating?
my whole life been Elijah. They just didn't give me a lab.
On TikTok. Creators broke down Oraculum's architecture, marveling at its hybrid logic layers and ethical tracing. One PhD student from MIT posted a 10-minute breakdown, calling it the most important student-led project of the last decade. But the other side came just as fast. Trolls flooded Reddit with fake claims that Elijah had stolen code, that his AI had been secretly trained on proprietary models, that he'd been planted by diversity recruiters to make white professors look racist. It got worse. By day 2, someone posted a blurred image of Elijah's apartment building, then a screenshot of his class schedule, then his mother's name. He went offline for an hour. When he returned, there were 1,042 unread messages. Some were death threats. Some were job offers. Some were desperate DMs from students at other schools. They're using AI detectors on only us now. What do we do? And some, the ones he read twice, were from kids barely 16, saying, "I thought I was dumb. Turns out the system's just broken." Across campus, Crestmont's administration scrambled like a drop deck of cards. They issued a statement within 24 hours of the video going viral. It read, "The views expressed in a recent video circulating online do not reflect the values of Crestmont University. The material misrepresents both data and policy, and the matter is currently under internal review." It was the kind of statement that said everything and nothing. But the public wasn't buying it. A Crestmont alumni group released an open letter demanding transparency and Elijah's immediate reinstatement. A petition on change.org, titled "Justice for Elijah Moore, End Biased AI Disciplinary Policies," passed 150,000 signatures by nightfall. The university's silence, especially toward Elijah directly, spoke louder than any memo. They hadn't contacted him. No professor had called. Not even Professor Rainey. At home, Elijah sat on the floor, his laptop resting on a blanket, instead of a table. He didn't like using desks anymore. They reminded him too much of lectures, where his raised hand was ignored, where his name was mispronounced, where his ideas were interesting only until they became threatening. His hands hovered over the keyboard. He could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes. Every post he made now had consequence. Still, he opened Twitter and typed, "I didn't set out to go viral. I set out to be heard." Oraculum wasn't built to shame anyone. It was built to hold truth. If you see yourself in it, maybe ask why. The post reached over 2 million views by morning. But the attention had a cost. The email from the university legal office wasn't just a cease and desist now. It was a full-blown legal threat. "Mr. Moore, this constitutes formal notice that your video content and public comments are under legal review for potential breaches of institutional confidentiality and violations of digital conduct policies. We urge you to refrain from further dissemination of material related to Crestmont University pending resolution." Elijah read the email twice, then once more. It was no longer about grades. It was about silencing him permanently. He forwarded the email to a civil rights attorney who'd reached out via DM. Attached with it, he wrote, "They're trying to erase my voice. Can you help me keep it?" She replied in less than 10 minutes. "I've seen this 100 times, but never with an AI as a co-defendant. Let's make history." Meanwhile, in the virtual sphere, the racism mutated. A popular tech YouTuber posted a video titled, "The Elijah Moore Problem, When Identity Becomes Immunity." In it, he accused Elijah of weaponizing race to shield sloppy coding and hiding behind the woke mob to avoid consequences. He ended with, "We're raising a generation that believes rules don't apply if you can cry racism loud enough." It went viral. 500,000 views in 3 hours. Elijah didn't respond. He didn't have to. Because under that video, comment after comment appeared, not from bots, but from students, staff, and tech workers, who had lived the quiet erasures of bias firsthand. One comment read, "Funny how y'all say race shouldn't matter until someone black builds something better than you." Another, "He didn't cry racism. He built a machine that measured it, and you're mad because it works." Crestmont tried damage control. They invited select black faculty to a closed-door dialogue to discuss the evolving narrative. They promised an internal review of grading policies. They pledged deep listening, but they didn't call Elijah until day 4. At exactly 8 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text, not from a staff member, but from a student in the journalism department. "Heads up, Dean Rourke just called an emergency press conference. Noon. On campus. No one said your name, but it's obviously about you. And you're not on the guest list." Elijah read it twice. They were holding a press conference about him. Without him. That was the play. Control the narrative before it spread any further. Spin it. Reclaim it. Erase him from it. He stood up, heart pounding. For 4 days he had waited. Let them make their moves. But now, they were rewriting the story in real time. He pulled out his phone, opened the camera, and hit record. His voice was calm. So Crestmont's holding a press conference today.
I wasn't invited.
That's fine. I don't need a podium to speak. I have a voice. And now, so do thousands of others. Whatever they say in that room, remember this. Truth didn't come from their building. It came from the lab they locked me out of. He uploaded it raw, no caption. Within minutes, it reached 250,000 views. At 11:55 a.m., Elijah stood just outside the lecture hall, where the press conference was being held. Not inside. Not at the podium. Just present. Through the glass doors he could see Dean Rourke adjusting his mic, standing before a university seal. Several reporters, local and national, were setting up. Then a tall man in a black coat stepped up beside Elijah. "I'm not here officially," he said, "but I had to see it with my own eyes." Elijah turned. The man extended a card. Dr. Andre Faulkner, VP of Ethics, Ionic Systems. "You've got something more valuable than code," Faulkner said. "You've got credibility. They can't clone that." Elijah nodded slowly. "They're gonna offer you a path back," Faulkner continued. "But not on your terms. On theirs. Watch carefully. The language will sound generous, but it's engineered for compliance." Elijah took the card, didn't speak. Inside, Dean Rourke stepped up to the podium. "Good afternoon. We understand the concerns that have surfaced regarding our university's practices and the role of artificial intelligence in student work." Elijah turned away before he heard the rest, because in his inbox, just as the dean spoke, came another message. This one wasn't from a journalist or lawyer or recruiter. It was from a faculty email address. And the subject line stopped him cold. Elijah Moore's disciplinary file. Agent misclassification discovered. Someone inside the university just discovered Elijah was never formally charged, but someone forged documentation to make it look like he was. And now that truth is on the edge of being exposed. 22 stories above ground in a glass and steel tower that bore Crestmont University's gold seal. A crisis meeting was underway. The room itself was cold, not in temperature, but in tone. A long polished mahogany table stretched beneath high ceilings, surrounded by 12 chairs. 11 of them were filled by faces that rarely stepped foot into classrooms. The 12th intentionally was empty. That chair had a placard in front of it. Student representation vacant. At the head of the table sat Walter Rainsley, chairman of the Board of Trustees, a tall man with silver hair, a Yale ring, and a voice calibrated for control. "We are not here," he said, "to debate race, or policy, or YouTube videos. We are here to protect the institution." His words fell with weight. Around him, nods of agreement passed between donors, retired CEOs, and faculty emeriti. All of them white, all of them insulated by legacy and distance. But a few were nervous. One board member, an older woman named Judith Kane, adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. "The video has 3.7 million views," she said quietly. "And the media narrative isn't going our way." "Because we let it spiral," replied Gregory Nash, a former venture capitalist and major donor. "We should have controlled the story the moment it dropped. Instead, we let this student make us look like we're running Jim Crow with Wi-Fi." Someone chuckled, bitterly. Another trustee, Oliver Dean, leaned forward. "Let's be clear. Elijah Moore is brilliant, but he's reckless. He exposed internal data, made it political. That can't go unanswered." "But you watched the video, right?" Judith asked, voice sharpening. "He didn't hack us. He didn't smear us. He showed patterns, bias, facts, interpretations," Nash replied, wrapped in the aesthetics of victimhood. That word victimhood hovered uncomfortably. A junior trustee, Emily Zhao, finally spoke. "He wasn't even officially charged. Someone forged documentation. We just learned this today." That made the room shift. Rainsley lifted his gaze. "Explain." Emily opened her tablet and pulled up the forwarded email from Academic Affairs. "It seems the misconduct report was never filed formally. It was drafted, but never submitted. Someone jumped the gun, and now it's spiraled into a legal and PR nightmare." Silence. "So," Nash said slowly, "we based our entire response on a document that doesn't officially exist." Emily nodded. "And that's not all. The student may have grounds for civil action if this continues. Possibly federal, given the AI bias angle." A long pause followed. Then from the far end of the table, a voice broke through. "If we expel him now," said board member Richard Lang, "we'll make him a martyr, a symbol." You all remember Colin Kaepernick. Do we really want the next one in AI linked to Crestmont? The room stiffened. "We're a university," Lang continued. "But more importantly, we're a brand. We represent stability, reputation. If we make him the face of suppression, we lose control of the narrative permanently." Rainsley tapped his fingers against the table, calculating. "Then what's the alternative? Invite him back? Give him a medal?" "Negotiate," said Judith. "A mediated return, with conditions. Restore some rights. Protect face." Nash scoffed. "You want to let him come back like nothing happened? After he embarrassed us?" Or, Zhao interjected, "We could admit what happened. Take accountability. Begin reform." That idea died in the room the moment it was spoken. Because accountability in rooms like this is always a risk, never a solution. While the trustees debated power and optics, Elijah sat in his room, reading the forwarded email for the 10th time. The subject line still flashed across his screen like a neon warning. Re Elijah Moore's disciplinary file. Urgent misclassification discovered. The sender had chosen anonymity, a burner account. But the content was real. A PDF showing the misconduct report had never been officially filed. Someone had saved it as a draft, then shared it, creating a paper trail that never existed, but was treated as gospel. He stared at the timestamp 11:08 a.m. The same morning his access to the lab was revoked. They never suspended him. They just acted like they had. The lie wasn't just bureaucratic. It was racialized. Weaponized. They had taken the assumption of guilt, wrapped it in policy, and pushed it through without proof, because he had challenged the rules. Because he had the wrong face for rebellion. Elijah closed the email and opened his phone. Over the last 24 hours, he'd received more than 20 job inquiries, most from Silicon Valley recruiters. Some were vague. "We admire your work." Others were more direct. "Let's talk compensation." But 3 names stood out: Tesla, Google, IBM. They weren't just reaching. They were courting. One recruiter offered to fly him to Palo Alto that weekend. Another said, "You'll have a team of your own within 6 months." He could leave. He could walk away from Crestmont, from the pain, the doubt, the relentless pressure. He could disappear into a tech utopia where talent supposedly triumphs over everything else. But he knew better. He knew that walking away meant letting the institution win, letting them erase the damage, rewrite the record, pretend it was all a misunderstanding. He stood up, walked to the mirror, and stared at himself. "You're not the exception," he said out loud. "You're the blueprint." They just didn't expect the design to speak. Back in the high-rise, the vote was drawing near. Rainsley stood, signaling the end of discussion. "We have 2 options," he announced. "Proceed with expulsion, citing unauthorized data use, or withdraw disciplinary proceedings, citing procedural errors and a mutual agreement for re-entry." He scanned the room. Then, as if on cue, a staff assistant rushed into the boardroom, holding a tablet. "Sir," she said breathlessly, "you need to see this." She handed it to Rainsley. His eyes narrowed. "It's a recording," she said. "It's from inside this room." Everyone went still. Rainsley pressed play. His own voice echoed back at him. "We are not here to debate race, or policy, or YouTube videos. We are here to protect the institution." Then Nash. "We should have controlled the story the moment it dropped. Instead, we let this student make us look like we're running Jim Crow with Wi-Fi." The blood drained from Nash's face. Another clip followed. Judith's words, Lang's Kaepernick comment. Zhao's reform suggestion that was instantly shut down. Every damning quote, every motive, every calculation, and then, silence. "How did this get out?" someone whispered. Judith's voice cracked. "Who leaked this?" Rainsley's hand shook as he passed the tablet to Emily. Her eyes widened. "The student didn't leak it," she said, scanning the metadata. "It came from the staff assistant's console." All eyes turned toward the assistant, who backed away, shaking her head. I swear I didn't." But it didn't matter. The file was already spreading. Elijah's phone vibrated. A new tweet had tagged him. Attached an audio clip. Caption: "Here's how Crestmont really talks about its black students. Expose them all." As the recording goes viral, Crestmont faces its worst nightmare. The world doesn't just know what Elijah built. It now hears exactly how they tried to bury him. The camera light blinked red again. Back from commercial. Back to Elijah. The host leaned slightly toward him, face neutral, but eyes alert. He knew this wasn't just good television. This was a moment. Elijah could feel the weight of the silence pressing in. Millions were watching. Not just students or scholars, but families in living rooms, boardrooms, dorms, classrooms where students who looked like him sat quiet, afraid to speak until now. He didn't reach for the flash drive again. He didn't need to. I want to tell you a story, Elijah said, voice clear and steady, but not about code, not about systems or stats, about what it feels like to walk into a room and know they've already decided what you're not. He looked directly into the lens, as if trying to lock eyes with the country itself. You can graduate top of your class, have perfect attendance, build something that nobody else in the department could even imagine. And still, they'll look at you like it's a glitch in the system, like you must have had help, like your success is suspicious, not because of what you did, but because of who you are. The studio was quiet. You all watched what happened. He continued. I built a tool, a curriculum, that didn't just complete assignments. It showed patterns. Patterns of bias, of racism. Patterns the school knew about and buried. And instead of asking how to fix it, they tried to erase the messenger. A monitor behind him lit up. Elijah turned toward it. I want you to see what that erasure looks like in real time. He tapped a button on a remote. The screen filled with video. A recorded lecture hall. Dr. Kimball pacing at the front. Elijah, seated in the middle row, silent. And then the moment, the line that would go viral. Mr. Moore, you seem confident. Why not let AI do the thinking for you?
The clip ended.
Gasps echoed in the studio. The host blinked. Even Tanner Lane, who had mocked Elijah minutes earlier, sat back speechless. Elijah turned back to the camera. That was the dare. Spoken in a room full of students, from a tenured professor. That wasn't curiosity. That was a trap. He paused. But I didn't take that dare to cheat. I took it to reveal something. I built an AI that asked better questions than the ones the system allowed. And the response was not to debate the answers. It was to try to destroy the student asking them.
Another beat of silence.
You know how many white students use ChatGPT to write their essays? Elijah asked, looking around. They laugh about it, brag about it. No hearings, no articles, no investigations. But me, I build something original, and they call it theft. He exhaled softly. This isn't about AI. This is about access. This is about who gets to be seen as brilliant and who gets flagged as a threat the moment they are. The audience burst into applause. It wasn't polite. It was guttural, urgent. The host tried to move on, but the room belonged to Elijah now, and he wasn't done. By the time the broadcast ended, Twitter had imploded. Elijah's truth was the #1 trending topic globally. Clips from the broadcast were being subtitled in Spanish, French, and Swahili. Within an hour, a Vietnamese-American coder posted, "This story isn't just black, it's all of us they tried to make invisible." Activists shared the broadcast across political threads. Alumni began posting screenshots of donation cancellations to Crestmont, with the caption, "Not $1 until you apologize." Sponsors of Crestmont's AI conference pulled out. One major hedge fund suspended its annual grant partnership. And then, before midnight, students from 9 universities staged walkouts in solidarity, holding signs that read, Code Now Color, I am Elijah, Truth Isn't Cheating. Even Oraculum responded. Users flooded the Open Bias platform with testimonies marked with a new hashtag, #MyGatekeepers, stories naming the professors who quietly penalized, doubted, or ignored them. It was no longer just about Elijah. It was a reckoning. Inside Crestmont's administrative building, chaos reigned. Dean Rourke sat in his office surrounded by printouts, tweets, donor letters, and an open laptop playing Elijah's broadcast on loop. The look in his eyes was pure panic masked as strategy. Across the table, 3 legal advisors debated damage control options. One wanted to sue Elijah. One wanted to offer him a private deal. The third said it was already too late. The story had outpaced the university. Then came the message from the president's office. Urgent. Single sentence. Announced temporary suspension pending full investigation. Immediately. Rourke stared at it. He knew what it meant. They were sacrificing Elijah publicly to buy time, to suggest neutrality, to avoid choosing sides, to appear measured. It wasn't justice. It was optics. At 8:14 a.m., Elijah received an email with a red header. Subject: Notice of immediate suspension, pending investigation. He didn't react. He didn't flinch. He just read it. Slowly. Carefully. Then, quietly, forwarded it to Synth.
Then to Conan.
Then to every major news outlet's tips inbox with the message: They suspended me for telling the truth on national television. That's the real headline. Within 30 minutes the suspension was public, and it backfired. Catastrophically. The student protests doubled. An online fundraiser titled Defend Elijah Moore raised $50,000 in a group of black professors from 18 universities signed an open letter of support. Tech companies released carefully worded statements expressing concern over the treatment of innovation rooted in equity. But the most powerful response came from inside. A faculty member at Crestmont, anonymous for now, published a resignation letter. I've spent years asking students of color to trust this institution. Today I cannot in good conscience continue that lie. The letter was shared over 200,000 times in a day. Back in Elijah's apartment, he sat quietly on the floor, hands in his lap. Synth called him, voice unusually tender. They're trying to break you, she said. They already did, he replied. But you built yourself back stronger. He smiled faintly. Carmen texted him next. You did what I never could. You made them look. He didn't respond. Instead, he opened Oraculum and typed, create narrative, academic system under surveillance. The AI responded instantly. Shall I begin with the story of one student, or all of them? Elijah stared at the screen. One, he whispered, but make it feel like everyone. As Elijah prepares to go fully public with Oraculum's full capabilities, he receives a new message, not from a student, not from the media, but from inside the university's own board of trustees. The message simply reads, meet me off campus. I have something you need to see. It changes everything. The message from the Crestmont trustee came through encrypted text. Meet me at 9:30 p.m. South Campus lot. Red hatchback. What I have changes everything. Elijah didn't hesitate. He packed nothing, wore black, and walked alone. The parking lot was dim, mostly deserted, the hum of distant streetlights casting long shadows between the rows of faculty cars. The red hatchback was there, engine off. Inside sat a woman in a slate gray blazer, glasses perched on the edge of her nose. As he approached, she stepped out, glanced around, then handed him a sealed envelope. No words, just a look. Inside was a printed email chain. Internal. Between Crestmont's top legal advisors and the university president. Subject line. Suggested delay strategy. More situation. In the body a phrase jumped off the page. If we stall long enough, the social media heat will move on. No precedent must be set for student-led AI challenging faculty evaluation, especially one tied to racial metrics. He didn't even finish the page. He looked up stunned. The trustee, her name was Vivian Cross, one of only 2 black members on Crestmont's entire board, met his eyes. I wanted to resign, she said. But that's what they expect. I'm still on the inside, still watching, and I couldn't stay quiet. Why now? Elijah asked. Because you're not the only one they've done this to, she replied. And I have the files to prove it. Vivian's leak became the final crack in the dam. With Synth's help, Elijah encrypted and archived every file. Dozens of backdated complaints, academic appeals dismissed without review, internal admissions audits, showing how ethnicity was silently used as a predictive variable for retention, and therefore rejection. It was systemic, and it was documented. But Elijah knew, exposure wasn't enough anymore. He needed to make it count. So he filed suit. The headline hit less than 48 hours after his suspension. Elijah Moore files federal lawsuit against Crestmont University. The complaint: systemic discrimination, wrongful suspension, retaliatory defamation, and racial profiling via digital surveillance. Elijah didn't just name the university. He named specific departments. He named Dr. Kimball. He included the internal emails, the fake academic misconduct record, the manipulated grading data from Oraculum's findings. And just hours after filing, something unexpected happened. Students started messaging him, not just from Crestmont, but from universities across the country. They had stories, they had records, and they wanted in. Within a week, the case grew from an individual complaint to something much larger. A class action. 15 students initially joined, 4 from Crestmont, the rest from neighboring schools. With eerily similar patterns, Sudden grade drops after race-related project proposals, unjust plagiarism accusations, withheld honors, denied internships. One black student wrote, "They told me I was too aggressive in a group project because I corrected a peer. That cost me my scholarship." An Asian student submitted, "Every time I mentioned racial representation in AI, my professor told me to stay technical. I got a B. I had a Latina student revealed, "They flagged my bilingual essay as language interference, but my white classmate's Spanglish paper was called innovative." The lawsuit hit a nerve that spanned institutions, disciplines, identities. It was no longer about Elijah. It was about the system. Synth built a secure digital intake form for plaintiffs. Within 72 hours, they had over 800 submissions, and counting. Carmen, who was now advising the Student Coalition as a licensed advocate, helped categorize the cases by violation type: grading discrimination, administrative retaliation, AI-based surveillance misuse. By the end of the second week, the case file had grown from 11 pages. National media picked it up. The New York Times ran a cover story. Beyond the code, the students fighting racial bias in academia's AI age. Time named Elijah. In its next 100
And Crestmont?
they went silent. Behind the scenes, their legal team scrambled. First, they tried to settle. A quiet offer of $250,000. A non-disclosure. A promise to review internal policies. Elijah refused. Second, they tried to disqualify Oraculum as inadmissible AI evidence. But Synth had documented every log, every source. Every dataset was cross-verified, peer-reviewed, and chain-authenticated. They had nothing. On it. And then the system blinked. At a federal court hearing in D.C., the presiding judge reviewed the case file. After just 15 minutes of oral arguments, she leaned forward and said, "There is enough here to move forward, not quietly, but publicly." And then she signed the motion. The class action suit against Crestmont University was officially granted public status. And with that, she issued something no one saw coming: federal subpoenas for internal university emails, dating back 5 years. Elijah stood outside the courthouse steps that day, a soft breeze brushing across his face. He didn't give a press statement. He didn't smile for cameras. He just turned, eyes locked on the horizon. The system had spent weeks trying to erase him. But now, the system had to answer to him. As the university scrambles to prepare for court, Synth intercepts a private email chain, one that reveals a professor plotting to destroy Oraculum's codebase remotely within 72. Elijah's AI for $10 million. The first wave came at midnight, exactly 6 days after the federal subpoenas were issued. Synth had warned Elijah. They'll stall, redact, delay. But eventually, if the court forces them, they have to comply.
Comply Crestmont did.
Not willingly. Not neatly. But they were cornered. The court-mandated data dump arrived in a compressed archive, 8.2 gigabytes of internal communications, flagged keywords, meeting transcripts, and email logs. Synth and Elijah sat side by side in a darkened room lit only by 3 monitors. Carmen brought food. Neither of them touched. It was 12:07 a.m. when they opened the first folder. At 12:14, they stopped speaking. Because by the third email, the truth was undeniable. It wasn't just bias. It was engineering. Subject line: re-incoming cohort. Who's actually ready? Sender: Dr. Lawrence Kimball. Recipient: multiple faculty, including admissions and legal liaisons. Date: August. Elijah Moore. Excellent test scores, yes. But remember, this is a diversity admit. They often perform strongest in narrative-driven coursework, weakest in logic-heavy tasks. Recommend close observation, especially in group dynamics and AI module. Potential risk for early burnout or disciplinary friction. Elijah read the paragraph 3 times. He hadn't even started at Crestmont when this was written. They had already decided who he was. They had coded his future into their fears. And it wasn't just him. The folder was filled with similar notes, some veiled, some brazen. Student flagged, observed displaying excessive self-advocacy during group project critique. Caution, risk of confrontation if graded harshly. Do we know if student name is first gen? Explains the poor grammar in capstone draft. That's 3 flagged black students this term. Is AI detection being applied consistently? We should consider cross-checking student names against AI outputs for accuracy. The less familiar ones, I mean. Synth scrolled silently. Carmen sat with a hand over her mouth. Elijah just stared. "This is every racist whisper," he finally said, "but print it." And then they found it. A thread labeled, "Internal only, urgent more repercussions." 6 participants, including Kimball, including the Dean of Digital Conduct, including the university's in-house counsel. "We cannot allow precedent here. Moore's project undermines institutional control over grading trust and sets the wrong example for future dissent. Per my recommendation, curriculum must be discredited swiftly and quietly. No public rebukes. Instead, raise plagiarism concerns and suggest unsanctioned data use. Ambiguity is our friend. Also, is there any way to delay reinstatement without direct suspension language? Explore pending procedural review as a soft denial." Elijah sat back, eyes burning. It had never been about cheating, never about integrity. They knew his work was clean, but they decided to smear it anyway, because it was disruptive, because it asked questions they had no honest answers for, because it measured them. And they panicked. By dawn, the documents had been duplicated, archived and prepped for release. Elijah didn't leak them, not yet. He sent them straight to the federal judge overseeing the class action. By noon, her office responded with a court notice. Plaintiff exhibits accepted. Pre-trial injunctions placed on data tampering. Further attempts to erase or alter logs will be considered obstruction. Hours later, news broke. National outlets ran the story. Crestmont emails reveal faculty labeled black students risk factors. Federal case explodes. Students walked out again. Faculty released staggered statements, many pre-written by PR teams, claiming to be disturbed and unaware. It didn't work. The rot was too visible. By day's end, the dominoes fell. Dr. Lawrence Kimball resigned, effective immediately. His statement was brief. "I regret my tone in internal conversations, and believe stepping down is in the university's best interest." Translation: he didn't want to testify under oath. Then came Dean Rourke. Administrative leave, then the VP of Digital Conduct. Health reasons. 3 down, more trembling. But even as the system unraveled, Elijah remained locked out. No reinstatement, no apology, no formal clearing of his record, just silence. Crestmont's statement was almost laughable. "While we deeply regret the inappropriate tone in some emails, we emphasize that no final adjudication has been made regarding Mr. Moore's academic status. Investigations are ongoing." Elijah read the line aloud in Carmen's kitchen. "No final adjudication," he said. "They admit wrongdoing, but still refuse to say I didn't cheat. Because admitting that would mean admitting the entire system is broken." Carmen replied, "You're the crack. They're terrified of what else will fall through." He didn't answer. He just walked out into the backyard, pacing beneath the gray sky. Synth joined him. "You okay?" she asked.
No.
He said, "But I'm ready." That evening, Elijah opened Oraculum again. He typed, "New directive. Final phase. Prepare institutional accountability report." The screen pulsed. Parameters? Compile every case of AI misuse flagged by open bias. Organize by department. Match patterns. Name discrepancies in discipline by race, gender, income bracket. Include documentation where possible. The AI got to work. Within an hour, it had generated a 47-page report. Title: Disciplinary Disparity: How Academia Uses Technology to Punish the Margins. Elijah read the first line aloud. Between 2021 and 2024, students of color at Crestmont were 4.6 eyes more likely to be accused of AI cheating than white students, despite lower usage rates. He exhaled. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was evidence. As the report prepped for publication, Elijah's phone buzzed. A new message. Not from Synth, not Carmen, not media. From an unfamiliar domain. A Catacore Labs. Subject: private offer. Immediate acquisition. He opened it.
Mr. Moore.
"We've reviewed the Oraculum engine and related datasets. We are prepared to offer you $10 million for exclusive ownership rights and licensing. This includes all proprietary code, model training architecture, and user interface components. You would retain a position as advisory CTO, with flexible involvement. You'd be financially set for life. Consider what you could build next, away from courts, conflict, or bureaucracy. Let's talk. No threats, no spin, just money. $10 million to walk away." Elijah stared at the screen. Behind him, the TV played muted footage of students marching across campus. He glanced at his laptop, still glowing with the report's final lines. Then back at the email. He sat in silence, because now it wasn't about exposure. It was about ownership, and whether he could be bought. Elijah doesn't respond to the offer. Not yet. But as night falls, open bias is suddenly taken offline, attacked in a coordinated digital strike. Someone's trying to erase the truth before it's fully told. Elijah didn't sleep. He stared at the email offer on his phone through the night, the one from Catacor Labs, offering $10 million for exclusive ownership of Oraculum. The words shimmered like a mirage. You'd be set for life, billed away from courts, conflict, or bureaucracy. No threats, no spin, just money with strings. He placed the phone beside him, breath shallow, and ran his hand through his hair. The walls of his apartment felt too thin now, as though every text, every mention of his name, would echo outside. He knew the catch. He drafted a counter-response. Polite, cautious, asking for clarification. What exactly would the licensing contract require? Who would hold rights? But he never sent it, because the point wasn't negotiation. The point was the proposition itself. Sell your voice. Walk away. Let this die. They hoped he would. Morning light filtered through blinds, pale and unremarkable. Elijah made coffee, prepared to face another day of legal battles and media stares. He reviewed Oraculum's report, the one he'd just compiled, showing how discipline, AI cheating accusations, and racial bias overlapped across hundreds of student records. It was his hammer now. His phone buzzed. A DM from a freshman at Crestmont. Elijah, they called me today. Told me my project sounds too advanced. Said I might be next. I don't want to disappear. His chest tightened. This wasn't just about him. It was bigger. It was generational. He drafted a quick reply. I see you. Don't be afraid. Keep your records. You're safe with open bias. Then the phone died. Screen black. He frowned. Battery was full. He tapped it again. Nothing. Downstairs in the living room, the laptop screen glowed. He thought, maybe someone disrupted power. No. He walked over, booted it. Open bias, his platform. The stories, the testimonies. It loaded. But the homepage banner read in bold. Elijah Moore, you a liar. The username fields, the verified profiles. Everything pointed to one thing. Someone had hacked open bias. He clicked. Every story that had been attributed to user student XXX now bore a prefix, questionable, possibly AI generated. Names had been changed. Victim testimonies flagged as unverified. The message feed was replaced by a banner. All allegations under review. No content is accurate until confirmed.
He felt bile rise.
He tried to log into the admin dashboard. Deny. His credentials no longer valid. Every backup drive, his local encrypted backups, his remote server, they were intact. But the front door was locked. He stared at the screen. He touched the keyboard. It felt like betrayal. He dropped into the chair, heart pounding, and called Synth. Phone rang once, twice, then a soft click. Her voice, quiet but sharp. Elijah, Synth open bias is hacked. They replaced everything. My name's been turned into the banner. I can't access the backend. A sound on her end. A soft inhale. I'm on it. But that's not all, she said. I traced incoming packets. It's coming from multiple locations, but one of them is within Crestmont's network. Elijah's heart sank. Who? He asked. She paused. Not sure yet. But whoever it is, they had privileged access. He leaned back. The betrayal was deeper than he thought. Later that afternoon, a notice appeared in his inbox from Crestmont's public relations office. Notice. In light of recent events, including allegations of unauthorized access and disruption of institutional systems, Crestmont University is reviewing all active external platforms referencing the school. We are unable to confirm or deny any claims made on those platforms until full audit results are obtained. He reread it. The message was vague, measured, do nothing. Opportunity disguised as neutrality. As he processed, his phone buzzed again. Catacor Labs recruiter had responded his earlier message, writing, Good morning, Elijah. We see that open bias is currently under review. Perhaps you should reconsider our offer before more damage. Our window closes soon. They weren't subtle now. The push, walk away before it becomes personal, before more damage. He clenched his jaw. No. That evening, Elijah met Carmen and Synth in his small living room. papers and laptops strewn across every flat surface. Carmen's eyes were red-rimmed. Synth paced by the window, fingers tapping. Elijah, Carmen said, voice low. This was intentional. They don't just want the code. They want your narrative. They want to rewrite victim into liar. They hope you'll take the money, settle, shut up, and they'll finally pretend it was all a tech glitch. He nodded. I know. Synth pulled up a packet of logs she had captured, just before the system lock. Look at this. There's a timestamp showback from a Crestmont server. 2:14 a.m. Mapping to the same internal IP that once accessed Elijah's academic record. That IP is now flagged as the origin of the hack. Carmen gasped. Synth continued. That IP belongs to the Office of Academic Digital Services. Someone inside. Someone with admin rights. The room went cold. The betrayal was in the bones. Elijah's mind raced. Who in that office had motive? Access? Facing pressure from the board? Then he remembered Vivian Cross, the board member who met him in the lot, the one who leaked the internal emails. She had said she was still inside, maybe too much. At 2 a.m., Elijah sat at a borrowed workstation in the computer lab. Synth arranged backup access. He launched a diagnostic script, a deep trace of the hack. It cascaded through firewalls, into logs, layered proxies, and then into a user account. Rainey Professor Rainey's internal ID. He stared. Could not believe. She had always been ambiguous. Supportive, then silent. Perhaps she had been trying to protect him by staying hidden. Or perhaps she had betrayed him all along. He flagged the trace, sent a backup to Synth and Carmen, and sat back, breathing hard. His phone dinged, a new message from a burner account. Look up. It's always been about who controls the mirror. She'll soon see. He lifted his head. At the window the blinds rustled. For a moment, in the dim evening light, he thought he saw a silhouette. Tall, still, watching. Elijah locks down the lab, but as he closes tabs and erases his trace, a new message pings in. She confided in me, and I recorded everything. The message contains an encrypted file labeled Rainy Confession Dwayeb. He's about to press play. Elijah sat in the darkness of his apartment, the hum of his laptop the only sound. The screen glowed with half-written code. He thought of Open Bias's homepage, vandalized, hijacked, silenced. He thought of the $10 million offer, the internal betrayals, the fevered media storms. But now in the long night, he remembered something. Fire purifies. The ashes were not the end. They were the beginning. He turned to Synth's message. Meet me at Server Farm, a secure remote node outside Crestmont's jurisdiction. At 3 a.m., wearing layers, he snuck out, code drives and hardware stashed in a backpack. The warehouse where the farm lived was unremarkable from the outside. A weathered brick building behind a fence, motion sensor lights, a discreet logo of a tech collective. Synth met him at the door, quickly ushering him through a back corridor past blinking racks and humming cooling units. They shut the steel door behind them. Inside, the room was expansive, filled with servers, routers, network stacks, fiber lines. Synth led Elijah to a terminal. We're rebuilding, she said. Decentralized, permissionless, peer-to-peer, no single point of failure, no admin access tied to a university network. We're going dark. Elijah nodded. This was the only way he could guarantee that Open Bias would survive. Synth laid out the architecture, blockchain anchors for integrity, distributed nodes run by volunteers globally, cryptographic sharding so that no one node holds full data, zero-knowledge proofs for user privacy. Elijah's heart pounded. This was not just a rebuild. This was reinvention, the phoenix rising. They spent all night and morning coding, migrating data snapshots, verifying integrity hashes. When dawn cracked, they had a skeletal version of Open Bias live again, accessible via encrypted onion routing, resilient against takedown, with a public mirror to prove authenticity. A headline on one node read, Phoenix Open Bias is back, stronger. Elijah tested it. He logged in. His admin keys, now fragmented, shared among 3 trusted nodes, allowed him limited oversight. He posted the core institutional accountability report, the 47-page code again, this time through the new system. No banners, no defacements. Clean, immutable, unassailable. By midday, screenshots of the revived platform trended. Students across universities cheered. Some sent encrypted messages. Thank you. We can talk again. a backlog of testimonies queued, waiting to be posted in secure form. Meanwhile, Elijah's voice reached beyond the code. He accepted speaking engagements, one at a Black STEM summit, one at an HBCU panel, one at a UN side event on discrimination and everywhere he went, he told the story not of bits and bytes, but of what it means to be erased, to speak, to rebuild. He spoke of code that held memory, that refused submission, that held institutions accountable. He became more than a student. He became a catalyst. Crestmont's response was forced. The public emails leak, the internal resignations, the pressure from donors and alumni, all mounting. The board commissioned an external audit, and as part of damage control, they quietly announced a new racial audit system, an AI Fairness Review Board. The irony was not lost. The tools they once tried to destroy, Oraculum's logic, open bias's pattern detection, became central to the very strategy they once rejected. In press statements, Crestmont said, "We recognize systemic issues and will partner with independent audit firms to ensure equitable treatment." Coverage hailed a turning point, but Elijah knew this was defense, not repentance. They were on the back foot. Still, he watched the changes start to ripple. Departments that had once ignored bias reports now quietly made syllabus adjustments. New faculty trainings were mandated. A program to anonymize initial grading, so that names weren't visible, began pilot runs. It was imperfect. It was slow, but until now, it was nothing. One evening, back in his apartment, Elijah sat quietly with Carmen and Synth. The soft glow of the city lay beyond the window. Synth sent a message. Node stability at 99.8%. No attacks detected for 48 hours. Caroline, a senior student in the coalition, DM'd him. "I defended a peer last night who was called out for speaking in non-standard English." They changed their tone. He leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. "Look," he said, "they're adjusting, not because they wanted to, because they had to." Carmen nodded. They remained locked out of Crestmont's systems. He still wasn't reinstated. They offered a joint statement. Reinstatement is under review. He accepted that he would not return on their terms. He would return on his own. Weeks passed. The rebuilt open bias continued to grow. Dozens of nodes in East Coast, Midwest, even overseas. The startup recruiters still pressed, but now with offers, positions, research grants, partnerships. Elijah entertained them cautiously. Child of renegade systems, not corporate silence. Then came a message from an alumni association at Crestmont. "We demand Elijah Moore's reinstatement." Signed by hundreds, threads exploded on social media. Faculty letters of support multiplied. Student governments at 5 campuses passed resolutions backing him. The moral pressure was relentless. On the anniversary of his suspension, exactly 1 year from Dr. Kimball's dare, Elijah awoke to an envelope slipped under his door. The inked crest on the envelope was faint. Crestmont University. Inside was a typed letter. To Elijah Moore. 1 year ago today, you were silenced. Today, hundreds demand you be heard. We, the undersigned, students, alumni, faculty, call for your full reinstatement, public apology, and implementation of the fairness structures you proposed. You changed this place. Now change it back. He read and reread. His throat tightened. He looked at the envelope. Then he looked at his laptop, where open bias nodes hummed with new testimonies, fresh reports, integrity logs. He closed his eyes. He whispered, "They asked me to walk away. They tried to turn me into a liar. But I'm still here." He opened the laptop, and on the public mirror page, at the top of the feed, Elijah Moore reinstatement. Sign the petition with tens of thousands of signatures. He exhaled. The fight was far from over. In the final seconds, Elijah's screen flickers. A new secure message appears, from Vivian Cross, the board member, with attachment board minutes reinstatement plan.ebic, showing Crestmont's trustees have secretly drafted reinstatement terms, but one clause unsettles him deeply. A forced non-disclosure binding him forever. 1 year to the day after Dr. Kimball's dare. The one that tried to humiliate Elijah in that lecture hall. A university-wide email flashed across the Crestmont network. Guest lecture, Elijah Moore, a retrospective on bias, code, and change. For the first time he was being welcomed back in the light, not as a student under suspicion, but as a speaker, as a force. Elijah arrived early. The same building, the same lecture hall 3B. Its curved rows, high ceilings, projector screens, and that same hush before class. The wooden seats still creaked in the same way. He walked in. Camera crews and reporters lined the aisles. But in the center of the room, nearly 1,000 students had gathered. Many of them held signs, "We see you," "Code Color," "Truth Speaks." Some had t-shirts with his silhouette. The air buzzed, tension, hope, memory. He paused at the entrance, absorbing the scene. It felt bigger than him now. It felt collective. On stage, the lectern bore his name beneath the Crestmont seal. Behind it, the projection board glowed faintly. He stepped forward, careful, steady, his heart a slow drum. Cameras clicked, phones snapped, the room fell silent. He didn't look back at Kimball's empty chair. He didn't raise his voice high. He began plainly. "Thank you all for being here, for showing up, for choosing to see, instead of looking away." He paused. Eyes roamed over faces, students, faculty, alumni, some wearing masks of disbelief, others tears. "This is the hall where I was challenged to let AI think for me, where I was told I should not trust my own mind, where my silence was taken for consent, where I felt alone." He let that settle. But today is not about revenge. Today is about what we begin now, together. His tone shifted, but not with triumph, with resolve. He outlined the journey, how Auriculum began as a dare-turned revelation, how open bias was deconstructed and rebuilt, how students across campuses joined in, how the lawsuit pierced institutional walls, and how the data revealed truths they could no longer deny. But he didn't linger in victory. He spoke of the cost, the threats, the betrayals, the hate, the silence from those who once seemed allies. He looked at the faculty section. Few faces were familiar. Many who had opposed him weren't present. But several young professors nodded. Perhaps new hires. Perhaps those who had learned. "I stand before you," he said, voice quiet but firm. "Not to ask forgiveness, but to ask something greater. Accountability, transparency, change." He clicked the remote. The screen behind him projected, not slides of theory, but living stories. Testimonies submitted to open bias, voices of students who had been flagged unfairly, penalized, silenced. Each slide had a name, a phrase, a data point, a house or city. The stories flickered, one by one, until the screen became a tapestry of voices. One read, "They docked me for tone when I challenged a syllabus." Another, "I was rejected from research for asking about algorithmic fairness." As the final slide faded, Elijah turned to the audience. These stories were hidden, dismissed, muted, but together, they build the full picture. He paused. "I didn't build a tool to humiliate. I built it to illuminate." He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them wide. "Let me share something personal." His tone softened. "In my first year here, I'd walk into halls hesitantly. I'd pause before raising my hand. I expected doubt. I expected correction. I expected to be questioned more harshly. I survived by hiding some of my brilliance." He looked out. "Some of you have done the same. We lower ourselves so they never feel threatened. We whisper instead of speak. We hope our silence passes." Murmurs of recognition passed through the room. He leaned forward, voice steady. "But our silence is not safety. It is surrender, and our brilliance, what so many see as a threat, is not a weapon. It is a beginning." He ended with the words he once whispered to himself, those late nights. "Our brilliance isn't a threat. It's a beginning." Silence followed. Then applause rose, hesitant, then swelling. Students stood, signs lifted, voices chanting. He stepped down from the podium, walking into the aisle, toward the crowd. As he passed rows, some extended hands, some wiped tears, some nodded. He touched a shoulder here, smiled softly there, eyes acknowledging their presence. The warmth pressed against the memory of isolation. He neared the exit when a young black student strode forward, book in hand. She paused in front of him. He looked down. She was shy, fierce. She raised the book, hands trembling. "I made something too," she said quietly, voice tight. "Can I show you?" Elijah paused. He looked at her. Memory raced. The freshman DMs, the hidden stories, the code still waiting to be born. He nodded. "Yes," he said. "Let me see." She opened the book, a slim volume filled with code, notes, sketches, a prototype of an AI-assisted tool for language equity, correcting linguistic bias and writing feedback. Something rooted in what Elijah had begun, but her own voice. He looked out at the audience behind him, many recognizing her courage. The wind shifted in the hall. He took her hand lightly, held the book, looked back at the stage. Then the building's projector flickered. The lights dimmed. A hush fell. On the screen behind them, unexpectedly, appeared a new slide. Projector error. Diagnostics required. But the next line flashed. System integrity check failed. Unauthorized registrations detected. The crowd murmured. Elijah's heart jumped. Something was wrong. He turned to the student. "Stay here," he whispered, then stepped toward the stage. He approached the lectern again, remote in hand. The screen pulsed. The diagnostics window filled. Then, overlaid, a message. Unauthorized user, R. Rainey, access level override detected. Elijah's throat tightened. Rainey's name. The professor who once mentored him. The one he suspected. The one he feared had betrayed him. He looked over his shoulder, scanning the faculty section. Eyes widened. He saw multiple professors jumping to laptops, typing, faces flush. He raised his voice, calm but loud enough for the hall to hear. "This ends now. Whatever you try to hide, whatever you try to block, we see you. We are rewriting the system, not at your mercy, but with our voice. If the tools fail, our truth will not." The screens flickered off. Then the lights snapped full. Applause hit the room, but Elijah's focus was sharpened. The student watched him, hope and fear in her eyes. He took a breath. He stepped off stage. As he exits the hall, a message pings on his phone. "Rainey has resigned. She left a final message to you. I never betrayed the cause, but I was forced to comply. Open file. Rainey last statement. Dackets T. And nothing is more dangerous than that revelation." They dismissed her pain until it made headlines. But how many stories like hers are buried in silence? What would you have done if that was your child? Comment below with your thoughts, and share this story if you believe no one should have to beg to be believed.